One, two, three, four.
You're listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast. We're an independent general interest bookstore putting great reads in the hands of people in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles. Hosted by resident Skylighters, we're here to bring you new and exciting author conversations, group reads, and bookseller chats. Happy listening.
Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome to the SKYLIT Books podcast. My name is Maddie Gobo, and I am your host today. I'm also a bookseller, and I do art for the bookstore as well. I'm really excited today to be welcoming two fantastic emerging local writers, and they are both 2021 Emerging Voices Fellows with PEN America. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that program and our guests in just a minute, but I just want to say welcome to 2022. We made it somehow. Time is not real, but here we are all together. I hope you and your loved ones are safe and you have plenty of books to read. And we're going to be talking to these two local writers today about their journey into writing, and which is one of my favorite things to talk about. So I want to give them their proper introduction. So today we have on the podcast Joanna Hong and Jenise Miller. Joanna Hong is a writer and translator living in Los Angeles. Jenise Miller is a writer, poet, and urban planner from Compton and the daughter of Panamanian immigrants. She is a 2021 California Arts Council Individual Artist Fellow and PEN America Emerging Voices Fellow. So just a little bit about the Emerging Voices Fellowship. If you guys aren't familiar with this is a really cool program that actually was founded here in LA. So PEN America is a nonprofit literary organization, and they run this program. The Emerging Voices Fellowship provides a virtual 5-month immersive mentorship program for early career writers from communities that are traditionally underrepresented in the publishing world, which, as you may know, skews heavily white and heavily East Coast. So we're fighting back here, getting some wonderful diverse voices and specifically Angelino voices into the industry, which is really exciting. This program is committed to cultivating the careers of Black writers and serves writers who identify as Indigenous, persons of color, LGBTQ+, immigrants, writers with disabilities, and those living outside of urban centers. It grew out of PEN America Los Angeles' forum Writing the Immigrant Experience, which was held at the LA Central Library in March 1994 and explored the experiences of first and second generation immigrant writers. In 1996, PEN America Los Angeles initiated Emerging Voices as a mentorship program designed to provide professional resources to writers seeking financial and creative support to pursue their craft professionally. And this is such a valuable program because even those of us who studied writing in college, they teach you some craft, they teach you how to come up with ideas, but they don't teach you how to get paid as a writer. They don't teach you the ways into the very Byzantine world of publishing. So it's really cool that PEN pioneered this program, and we're going to hear a little bit more about it from these two new fellows. So I want to first welcome Joanna and Jenise to the SKYLIT Books podcast. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you, Maddie, for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Yes.
How are you both doing today?
Doing all right. Best as I can.
Hanging in there. Joanna, how about you?
Yeah, I echo that. Have heavy emphasis on the best as I can.
Yes.
Focus on the positives. So here we are with a couple of great writers. How did you get your start in writing? What was the seed that drew you to writing as your profession, as your career, as your calling? Jenise, would you start? Can you tell us a little bit?
That's my profession, career, and calling. What drew me? I am one of those writers who, wrote in a diary or journal when I was little. So I think writing was like an escape for me, and going to the library, like I really enjoyed doing that. And I think when I was younger, like going to the library was a way also, it was the place that I could go. And then as I got older and could like go out on my own, like catching the bus and the train in LA, I could go to the library by myself. It was like this trusted place where, my parents or my mom. I was like, oh, I'm going to the library. And she would just let me go. Meanwhile, I was going like, at the time when I was like a teenager, we lived in Watts. So I was going like to downtown Long Beach. I was going to downtown LA. I don't think she knew where I was going. I was just like, I'm gonna go to the library. And I'd be walking down the streets of downtown LA to get from like the train station to the Central Library. Because once I discovered that the Central Library had all of the books that I needed and wanted. So I think that those seeds were planted there. I think they were definitely planted with my parents. I have a memory of like my mom, she would read these like, they were basically like novellas, but in a book form, like, and they had pictures. They looked like comics, but it had like the drama and they were in Spanish. And so I would see my mom reading that. And, I just enjoyed like reading and words and like, there's something about reading, I think, and especially for me, I can say for myself that the more I read, the more it makes me want to write. It inspires me to write. Like it's like a natural next step. Writing is a natural next step from reading. And so I always loved to read, and I enjoyed like writing and journaling, and I wrote little stories here and there when I was young. But I didn't really see writing as a career or profession. Actually, my family, um, being, I wasn't the oldest, but, as a responsible, young person in my family, I just didn't see writing as something that I could do as a profession. I felt like I had to like do something that would be more sustainable and something that made more sense and something that could help my family economically. Um, and I ended up majoring in sociology, even with that kind of thinking. So I don't know, sociology and Black studies. So anyway, so that's what I did undergrad. I ended up going in urban planning. And so to speed up the story, when I have two young daughters, and when I had my first daughter, I was going through a lot. And my mom had been diagnosed with cancer at that time. Return to writing kind of as an outlet. And I found this this free creative writing class that was being hosted by a local nonprofit based in LA called DSTL Arts, Distill Arts. And, it was an outlet for me. It was a place that I could go while I was, a new mom and dealing with different things, like for an hour. And we would have like prompts and, we would write. And so that kind of re-energized my writing. And that's, I think, where I really started to consider writing again as something that I could do as a profession. And in a way, I guess it did call me back. And I ended up through the Distill Arts program, publishing a chapbook. And, the teachers that I was working with through that program, they were really affirming in terms of my writing and in terms of my voice. And I think that really helped motivate me to think again about doing writing, think again about like writing as something as something that I wanted to do like professionally and, seriously. So now that I'm here.
I love that journey because it's so community based. Like you start out in the library, you're traveling all over to all these different branches, exploring their collections, and then you find your way back to writing as an adult through a community class. Like I think so often we think of writing as a very solitary activity, but for you it sounds like it wasn't at all.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. All right, Joanna, could you tell us a little bit about your journey into the world of writing?
Definitely. Well, I totally agree with Jenise's experience about that inevitable bond of reading and writing that we all know really well. But I was a total book nerd, which like compromised my social skills to a certain extent when I was a kid. But jokes, no, like that's not completely false. But yeah, libraries, I would say libraries and bookstores were like absolute havens and places where I could just fully be myself and where I fully realized the power of stories. And that was all thanks to my mom. And my dad had forced me to write in the most positive way, but like I remember being like my first day of kindergarten, my dad was like, here's your diary, start writing. And I was like, what the hell is it? But I never stopped journaling, I guess since my first day of school. And that's when I kind of was like, oh, wow, I can write what happens to me, or write what happens in my life and other people's lives from my perspective. And I found that there was a lot of kind of agency in that at a young age that gave me, that was like the one thing I really looked forward to doing at home. It sounds so nerdy saying that, but it really excited me, and to just have that power to create something. And so growing up, I think, well, like I'm from a multicultural, multilingual household. Like I grew up hearing my parents speak Korean, but my dad grew up in Brazil, so I heard Brazilian Portuguese and then also Spanish. And I just thought, okay, like there's so many languages out there, there's so many written texts. I want to know what more there is. And I think that made me more curious, I guess, as I got older, to see what else was outside of where I was from, a little suburb above, like the Glendale area in LA. And I had a really kind of weird, how do I say, like adolescence and early adulthood, where I left the country when I was still, I think I was like 17 or 18, after my first year of college, and I studied abroad. And I stayed abroad, and I stayed in Europe and South Korea for about 10 years. And I had different jobs. Like Jenise, I kind of thought, okay, like I love writing. I obviously love to read, but I didn't really know how to make that kind of mesh with my career goals. But I did do journalism, and I was a freelance writer. And I was reporting on stories that were really kind of attractive and intense to me, which were always about like underrepresented stories of struggle, and how people like came to point B when they were at point like negative Z in their lives. And I don't know, I think just having been exposed at a young age to these kind of intense human rights abuse stories that I was helping to write about in my early writing career, I thought, wow, I wish there was some way I could and tell the story that I wanted to tell too, maybe about these people or things that I hoped for these people, or even for myself. And that's when I was like, wait, I can write stories. So it kind of dawned on me much later in my life. And while I was working day jobs and like I don't know, like corporate businesses, or even just as like a poor struggling journalist, I just remember like on subways or buses or long walks, I'd always just like write down notes about little things that popped up for stories that I wanted to write eventually. I didn't think that I could do it then. And so I ended up with like notebooks of these notes for these stories that I thought that one day I could kind of tackle down. And it wasn't until recently where I kind of actually opened the page and thought, okay, maybe I can sew something together here. It's a weird way.
That's fascinating. I think every writer's story is different, and I wanted to ask this question to start because we're coming from a place of you both being designated as emerging voices, and I think it's important to show our audience that a writing career it's very hard to track. A lot of the time, things are happening under the surface. You can't see that a writer is becoming a writer until all of a sudden they are a writer. So my next question I wanted to ask is, what does it mean to you to think of yourself as an emerging voice or an emerging writer? How do you conceptualize that? Was there like a moment that you felt like you did fully emerge? Are you still emerging? Are you not sure if you've emerged yet? Where are you in that process right now?
Yes, I do feel like I am still emerging. But like you said, like, or I like how you said it, like, where does a writer come from? And there were all of these things happening to contribute to, your point of emergence, I guess, as a writer. And I'm gonna randomly, what that makes me think of is like, so one of the things that as I was listening to Joanna, I was like, oh yeah, there's so many people who are a part of my story, like my parents, my father and my mother, who were creative in their own ways, whether it was like through cooking or, my dad would create like point in time, my mom, she would do like embroidery, and it's just different ways that they had creative outlets. And I think that contributed to this emergence. And then there were the teachers that I had in school, like mostly like Black women teachers. I went to schools in Compton, and you know, they were the first ones to give me assignments where we had to go to like the Compton library or to take us to the library at the school. And to the point of emergence, there was one book I remember in fifth grade, we had to read about Greek mythology. And I love the story of Athena. And like Athena gets birthed from, I think, like Zeus's head, like this idea, and it just comes forth. And I think maybe if I can make a little connection there, maybe that's how it happens, right? Like there's this idea that gets planted, and then it emerges. But like you said, it's been there, just it was there, and then it's just emerging. And so like even before I delved into creative writing, I was a researcher. So my area of work in urban planning was as a researcher in making GIS maps. And and then also for me, like coming from a place like Compton and growing up in like Watts, like I knew that there were, I lived parts of the story of these places that never got told. Um, and then as a researcher doing research for and about communities like the ones I grew up in, I got to tell those stories, or part of my research involved talking to people about parts of the story that you don't get from like statistics and from the numbers, like through qualitative research. Um, so I feel like I do like this word emerging. Um, I don't know what it means to arrive. And I don't know that I want to have arrived. I like being an emerging writer. I don't know. I mean, I have to think about that. Right now I'm just sitting in the title or the space of emerging, but I don't know what it would be like to not be emerging. I guess there are writers who I look up to who I probably wouldn't call emerging, but um, for now I like emerging. And was there more to the question that I'm
No,
missing?
I think that answers. I like how you framed it as like it's like an ongoing process of
Mhm.
discovery. Like there's still, even when you've published 10 books, there's still things that are emerging out of your head, like Sue's.
Yes.
Joanna, what do you think about that question? I know it was a big question.
No, I love that popping out of Zeus's head. I think that was powerful. Uh, I mean, I don't. I guess like off of what Jenise just said, I don't want to stop emerging as well, just because for me that word is like it parallels growth, and I feel like no matter what stage I'm in my career or my writing journey, I think even just within myself, if I know that there's still room for me to grow and there's still room for me to emerge as, let's say, a better, improved version of myself, or just even more skilled in my own craft, like that would be a useful thing to motivate me to, I don't know, I think that like complacency and thinking that you've quote unquote made it, that's a, I think Denise referred to this too, but it kind of daunts me. I don't really quite want to get there because that's not what writing is about for me. And so I know there are like different interpretations about emerging, obviously, like for early career writers, but I think I want to take that term with me. from here on out. So, I mean, I didn't even know I was an emerging writer though, so it's good to hear somebody say I was an emerging writer, to be seen. Yeah.
Definitely. So I want to ask a little bit more about your experience in the program with Penn. So first of all, how did you find Penn Emerging Voices? And then second of all, what have been some of the highlights of your experience with the program over the last year? Joanna, do you want to start this time?
Sure. I was just talking about this with a friend the other day, but how I found out about the EV program was I was scrolling on Twitter, and one of my favorite authors, Min Jin Lee, had posted about this fellowship. And I'd been following Penn for a while, but I hadn't heard of this fellowship opening before, and just seeing one of my favorite writers put that up, I was like, oh, like maybe I should give it a go. So I was talking to my partner about this, and I was like, we had this game about like, oh, should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it? And for me, I was like, I really want to do it, but I was really scared about not getting it. And I mean, that's a whole other like door opener, like the conversation of failing. But I just kind of came across it by happenstance, and I thought, okay, why not? And that's what happened there. Yeah.
Jenise, how did you find the Emerging Voices Fellowship?
So I, excuse me, I had attended the VONA workshop in poetry, and someone in my cohort was a Penn Emerging Voices Fellow previously. Her name is Soleil David, and she encouraged me to apply because she said it was, for writers who didn't have an MFA. And, I was also looking for ways to continue to learn about, the craft of writing. And so she had recommended it to me. And that's how I found out about it. And I applied, and I didn't get selected that year. So it was the previous year before this, past year. And then I did end up applying again this year, and I, was selected. So
big congratulations to you both. It's so cool. So how has the program been for you? What have been some exciting things that have happened over the course of your 5 months? Did you work with anyone you were really particularly excited to work with? Did you learn any surprising facts about the publishing industry we should know?
The first thing that comes to my mind was I was so blown away by the other writers in my fiction cohort. We're all from different parts of the country, like from LA to Oklahoma to New York. But I was really kind of moved and in awe of like the quality and the depth of the writing that my fellow fellows produced. And it was really motivating in the sense that since I don't have a formal education in creative writing, I've just written creatively as a side hobby. That's something I've always wanted to kind of fully realize one point. But it was just really motivating to also see how much of themselves was poured out into their work, and how motivating that was to see for me in terms of how I saw my own work too. And I think the feedback sessions that we had with each other, like the workshops, were really helpful in that sense, where we got to each read a significant amount of each person's work. So that was really such a blessing for me, because I hadn't really been in that kind of environment ever. Although this was done virtually, but it still was really wonderful to just connect, even as like virtual friends. That sounds weird, but and I think the second thing was just having my mentor, being connected with the author Patricia Engel. She was my mentor, and she was so open and warm and like so resourceful, but just genuine as a human being. And I think for me, going into it, when I was told about the mentorship scheme, I was really kind of taken aback and intimidated, thinking, oh my God, like I'm not qualified to speak to somebody who's written a book, which was like, kind of weird. But I thought I didn't know how to approach it. But she was great because she really tore down a lot of barriers that I had in my mind about like the publishing industry, or just even writing as a craft and as a woman of color, and owning your story and your narrative, and questioning the critical voices that have been like also kind of systemically built in my head, about who can write a certain story. So yeah, I think those two things really stood out to me, that I'll carry on, like literally, I think, for forever.
Big shout out to Patricia. Jenise, how about you? How's your experience been so far?
I would agree with everything that Joanna said. It's amazing to be amongst this cohort of writers, and you look at what they're writing and how they're writing, and you're like, oh wow, I am a part of this group. And as well as the mentorship. And my mentor is Dana Johnson, who is from LA. And so I really appreciated the opportunity to connect with this amazing writer who I knew of before, and, who writes about LA and the city, this place that, is just complex, and that we both love. And, this is someone who's writing about it and writes about it well. And I think there was, Dana did also for me rather immediately take down the like almost the celebrity factor, like because you're so down to earth and so open. And I will say too, also, where as having a mentor and having her as a mentor helped, and to the question of like what did I kind of gain or learn, or how has the fellowship helped. I think Maddie, what you mentioned earlier about like there's not necessarily one way to become a writer. I think it was helpful to learn that also there's not necessarily one particular way to also publish as a writer, or to reach that goal or that point of like publishing a book. So the fellowship definitely, I had never considered, and it made me wonder why I never considered it, but I never considered writing a book as an industry. I work in a different industry, come from, nonprofit, and there's strengths and challenges to that. And I had never looked at publishing a book and writing as like its own industry with its own, challenges and like strengths. And so I think that was like a big eye opener. We're talking about numbers and ways decisions get made, and agents, and why you need an agent, and like commissions, and a book proposal. I was like, what? It's a book proposal. I'm supposed to do that. I did not know about book proposals. So that's how much like the fellowship for me has been helpful in just like the details of how a book gets made. Like I was just just showing up to the library, like checking out books. I never thought about how those books necessarily like got there and got bound and I didn't think about any of that. So I think the fellowship for me was definitely helpful in that way, for sure. And then where Dana as a mentor was helpful was then able to say, okay, this is the broad picture and this is how it worked for her. This is how her process has gone, why some people have done book proposals and some people haven't. Like just having the mentor plus the information in all of the workshops and presenters that we were learning from, it definitely gave us more of an on the ground look at, okay, what all of that, the industry and that process looks like for a particular writer who is successful. So So I think it was very helpful and eye-opening and enlightening in that way, and encouraging and affirming that, you know, you don't have to go a particular route, you know, especially the routes that we may be more familiar with, you know, through social media and things like that.
Yes, here. I think whatever way you can find your way to publishing is valid. There's, you know, the publishing industry itself is a messy business. It's pretty gross when you know how the sausage gets made. So it's important to find people who can bolster you on that journey through the sausage machine. I don't know why I'm
Such a
sticking
great
to
way
that.
to put it.
Also, I have one more question, and then I would love to hear a little bit of both of your writing to close us out, if that's all right. So my last question is just, I'd love to hear about the projects that you're working on, what you're excited about in your writing process right now, if you feel comfortable sharing. I know I don't want to push you to share things you're not ready to share yet, because it's important to protect your projects, but I'd love to hear a little bit about just what you're thinking about right now. Jenise, would you start us off?
I feel like I should be ready for this question. I should have the pitch. I should have the bullet points. Like, I'm working on such and such, which will be this and this. And I kind of have it. And, you know, I'm sorry if I'm disappointing the staff of Pen Immersion Voices. Like, this is the whole point of the fellowship, so you can get to the point where you can talk about what you're doing. Let's see. So, I mean, I am writing, and I feel like I've been writing towards a project, and I think the fellowship was helpful in just confirming, like, you know, that what I've been writing that kind of seems a bit like disparate and a bit all over the place actually, you know, can and hopefully will come together in like a, you know, a couple, one or two like book projects. So for the Pen Immersion Voices, I read as a part of our final reading an excerpt from an essay that I've been working on called Labor of Memory. And that is a project that I'm like writing about and writing towards. In my writing, I write a lot about place and like intersectional history, art, particularly Black art, and, you know, my own personal experiences in like different places and, you know, in the culture and cultures that I come from. And so this project, which I'm calling Labor of Memory, it's a reflection of like labor, like the history of labor in my family and, you know, myself, and myself being a descendant of folks who migrated specifically for labor. You know, my great grandparents who migrated, you know, from the Caribbean to work, you know, as part of the Panama Canal Project, and, you know, my parents who came, you know, for work. Well, my mom came for love, she says. She said, and just how that influences, you know, my life, and how, you know, how that influences many of our lives, like the decisions that are made when people are looking for work, um, and what it says about culture, and then also the labor for myself is also the labor specifically of memory, like, so going through archives, and trying to find information that wasn't passed down for, you know, various reasons, like information that wasn't passed down to me. So it becomes a labor to try to find this information and try to find out more about my grandfather and about my great grandparents and things like that. Um, so that's what I'm writing about right now. And I am writing still about Compton and Watts. Just, I don't use the term like counter narrative. It's more just about like, just adding narratives to the singular narrative that has been put forth about, you know, Compton and Watts as well. I am working on editing a series of like articles and pieces that will be mostly by writers who are from Compton. Through that'll be coming up soon. That'll be published through KCET Artbound, and so that's where I'm at right now. There are other things just I definitely am like writing where I am right now. I am enjoying what I'm doing through writing and like the doors and the spaces to like create that it has opened for me, like working with artists. Like right now I'm doing like an exchange with an artist whose work I really love, from Panama. Her name is Joanna de Dier. She's a collagist, and so we're working on something. So yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
Wow, Jenise, you're so busy. Those all sound like incredible projects. Thank you for sharing. I'm particularly interested in the labor one, as I think maybe a lot of us are right now, rethinking our relationship to labor, and how we can maybe forge better relationships. So I'll look forward to reading all of those pieces soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Joanna, could you tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
Absolutely. I don't have anywhere near the amount of projects that Jenise has. I might bore listeners. But I guess, yeah, well, going into the fellowship, I had this story that's called, it is a fiction novel I've been working on called Mother Tongue, which I feel like, crossing my fingers, I recently finished. Um, so that's kind of, I've never done something like that before. Um, so I pinch myself before I go to sleep sometimes, being like, did I really finish that, or do I need to like continue that again? Because I think one of the questions I kept asking like throughout the fellowship to other authors was, how do you know when you're done? And I got a whole bunch of mixed responses, because they're like, well, sometimes you just know, and other people are like, oh, you never know, you just do. You- and then you just see, you have to let it go, and that's something I've been learning right now, and through the fellowship, particularly like the, I call it like the logistics of this kind of seemingly ambiguous creative process, also like having some kind of quote unquote order to it, but at least your way of processing how to move forward. And for me, I think I've been trying to figure out how to like step away from something after I feel like it's almost done, or if it is done, and then also figuring out what to work on next. So I have been brainstorming on another new novel in the works that I want to kind of tackle down. But in terms of the writing material or the subject matter, at least for this recent project, Mother Tongue, it's centered on, well, I love intergenerational stories, and especially highlighting how people experience or overcome trauma that's been directly or inadvertently passed down to them. As a daughter of immigrants too, I think through my own personal experience, or I've seen people, or even like people in my own family, or just strangers go through what they have, just based on circumstances that they didn't choose. I think for me it was really, it's always very compelling to, I don't know, I feel drawn to write about those voices that you don't really get to hear about too much, at least like in a real humanistic fashion or manner. I feel like, I don't know, I was thinking about this lately, like my kind of sense of duty as a writer is to be honest about, um, obviously like the human experience, but also just um, humanizing people. There's so much dehumanization that's out there, for different, let's say, like people of color, or different types of people. And I always kind of feel like whether I'm writing a short story or prose, or even just something nonfiction, I feel like that's kind of the backbone of where I'm coming from. I always want to shed that light. Um, and gosh, where am I going with this? Oh yeah, so intergenerational trauma. I I know there's a lot of kind of controversy about like people saying, like some people are really voyeuristic about what stories of trauma they choose to highlight, and or trauma should be written about at all. I do believe that it should be written about, just because I feel like to say that there isn't any trauma in our lives is false. And I think that does injustice to um, improving people's lives or actually having more empathy for them in the real world. So um, that's that's kind of the compass I have with my writing. So I love to write about family dramas. I love to write about relationships. I This recent project was also a kind of historical fiction novel, just because I lived in different places. I love writing about like different cities. Like it's set in South Korea and also Germany during the 1980s. So when there was a lot of division politically on both continents, and um, I'm really kind of attracted to seeing what causes this very human problem of division and what have people done to solve it and where have we failed in that process. So that's very vague. That's kind of the North Star for how I want to start new projects or approach new things. And also I guess like shout out to the fellowship and of course my amazing mentor. I've learned how to I mentioned like to step away from something. I think that in our culture in America, we're so used to like, hustle, hustle, go, go. We were just talking about like wanting to nap for a week. But I think also as creators in a culture where we're so used to hearing, you always gotta win, you gotta win, you gotta get, like there has to be also this kind of training or reconfiguration in our minds that had to step away from something and like recalibrate and restore or rejuvenate yourself. And I think the pandemic's taught us a lot about that. So that's something that's really kind of in the forefront of my mind.
I really like that philosophy. I think, you're saying this is all very vague, but I don't see it as vague at all. I feel like it's all very relevant to, just dealing with life under the pandemic and life under late capitalism and all of the massive forces working to dehumanize us and our neighbors at all times. And it does feel like this approach to writing is a small way of fighting back against that maybe has more impact than you know. And so thank you for speaking about that. All right, so to close us out, I would love to just hear some samples of your work, and then I'm going to ask you to recommend a book, because I'm a bookseller and I love to just keep adding to my long lists of books I need to read. All right, so which of you would like to start?
So I'm going to read from a part of an essay, which is like one of the few things that I got published last year. And, I think what we've been talking about like rest and work and pacing, like last year, because these past couple of years for me have been tough. And I feel like, I've been needing like the pacing. And so, when everyone's doing like, oh, roundup of the last year, like I had some things that I've done, but I was okay with not like having a whole list of things because I just needed that pacing. And I think with the projects that I have now, it kind of feels like I'm able to like set the pace, which feels good. So this was a piece that was published in January, on January 27, 2021 in the Los Angeles Review of Books. And I was doing some thinking about the Compton Christmas Parade, because it didn't happen the previous year and it didn't happen this year. And it's a parade that I like always look forward to. It pulled from some photos from an archive, of Guy Crowder, who was a photographer locally, and he was a photographer for the LA Sentinel, as well as like the first African-American photographer for Los Angeles County. like the government system, Los Angeles County. And so his archive is with Cal State Northridge in the Tom and Ethel Bradley library archives. So I'm pulling it from archives and then personal experiences. Like my mom had passed away the previous year in 2020. And actually my father ended up passing away in 2021. So it was just a whole tone, a whole mood. And so I'm going to read from that essay, which you can find at the LA Review of Books online. The title, I should say the title. The title is I Hope That We Can Be Together Soon, which is a song, R&B song by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. There is a love song I miss hearing, blasting from a passing car or motorcycle, since there was no parade this past year. Hope That We Can Be Together Soon by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, featuring Sharon Page. The song opens with what sounds like electric raindrops. Page, a soul singer from Philadelphia, floats over the melody, articulating the statement and question of the song. This idea of soon reminds me of my mother who passed away last year, who would say, soon come. Born in Panama, granddaughter of West Indian Panama Canal workers, she will forever shine in my memory, offering soon come as a future promised, without the assurance of when. I hope that we can be together soon, not knowing when, but believing that it is inevitable. Sharon Page renders the refrain, I hope that we can be together soon, with heart-rending longing. As in the song, there are reasons, known and unknown, why we cannot be together. Page also passed away in 2020, yet her voice forever shines in these melancholy notes. I hope that we can be together soon, she sings, real soon. In the poem Doo-Wop, Ahmad Jamal Johnson writes, the same tune is playing, as if that cry is holding the air, as if we are dying, as if we have never lived. Compton has tried to change the way it is perceived. At the beginning of her tenure, Mayor Aja Brown, the city's youngest mayor, proposed Compton as the new Brooklyn. The mayor before her, Eric Paradin, touted birthing a new Compton. The slogan was painted on utility boxes, along with a towering mural of then President Barack Obama, steps away from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. monument, designed by Harold Williams. While the myth of the city prevailing in popular culture has been a hindrance to changing the way Compton is seen by outsiders, it remained an asset to those within it. Surviving made you feel you outsmarted danger, made you feel brave. Living here, you believe the hype, even though it may not be completely true, because it grants you a certain credibility. If you can survive here, the outsider's perception of here, you can survive anywhere. Still, living here gives a certain tenacity that years and times like this require. And the Christmas parades continue to draw a cadre of celebrities and artists who are from the city. Kendrick Lamar returned to great fanfare, including a key to the city and an energetic dance performance by local youth, embodying and shouting his lyrics. We gonna be all right. And it is true, as it always has been for this city. We gonna be all right. I don't know what it's like to be from a city no one has heard of. When I tell a stranger that I am from Compton, no other reference is needed. It's real to us, and we call ourselves real far more than any outsider can imagine. If it ain't the place to be, it's the place to be from. I'm from Compton. That's right. We're the art. Lorraine O'Grady witnessed repurposing of her Art Is gold frames concept in a Biden-Harris campaign video. Reflecting on the legendary event in her recently released book, Writing in Space, she said, although it had been a joyous occasion, it wasn't the joy that attracted me. It was the complexity, the mystery, the images that no matter how hard I looked would never become clear, would always remain out of reach. What Compton means will always remain out of reach. It is defined and redefined with every generational shift. Upon first glance, the gray 1973 Christmas parade photos may appear unclear, the images hard to see. Performing in the rain had to be difficult, even if the people performing made it look easy. The images reflect that day, that moment in time, in all of its uneasy beauty. People whose spirits refuse to be dampened in the downpour. I do hope that we can be together soon. Can you make it real soon?
Thank you so much. I love the way the music weaves through that piece. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that it was about Compton. Also, it's about a lot of things. My voice is just...
Yeah, Joanna says that was gorgeous. I agree.
Thank you.
Beautiful, Jenise.
All right, Joanna, are you ready to read us something?
Oh, yes. I think so. Right, so this is a little short excerpt from my novel titled Mother Tongue. And just to provide a little context, my main character, Sue, is having a conversation with her best friend, Dominic, but she's having a political awakening for the first time. And this is, I must mention, this is around in the 1970s in South Korea. Nobody told her about what the Americans might have done to the Korean woman. You don't curse the heroes. As the night was calm, a chill danced down her spine and back up to freeze her throat, but she held herself tighter, squeezing her bony fingers against the endless raised dots around her forearms, as if to warm or hold herself together from falling apart. There was still boundless information about the war she felt she could never understand, nor wanted to. The details she imagined would be better bound in an ancient chest, buried deep underneath the dirt, right below her feet by the Han River, right where they were now, the key thrown away. The flickering of burning lights on the river's insatiable currents awakened the thought that every person must have one of those chests, like her parents who rarely spoke of their own pasts. Her parents were perfect poster examples of what the war could do, a family with roots split up by ideology and borders and minefields. Her father from the north, her mother from the south. They had both mourned for Min Chol-opa, her cousin, when he was murdered, damning the extremists who prized their supremacist belief, deeming itself above human life and the freedom to navigate it as one would wish. With their eyes closed, her parents could recognize the screams of someone burning and already see that nobody would come to help. Call it injustice, call it dealing with what you've been given, but don't you dare say you were surprised. She knew they knew this, but did she understand? She tried to explain this to Dominic, yet as she spoke, her words fumbled and radiated with embarrassment that she felt she could purge out of herself and into the moving river, furious at how Dominic could speak more confidently about the political state of her own country in better, more articulated terms than she ever could. She felt challenged. The wretched feeling that froze her throat slithered down into an illogical envy of him, having lived in other countries and having witnessed other realities that provided a legitimate basis of analysis, raging from the depths of her core, an unknown urge to want to experience firsthand such political calamities that destroyed people's lives. to give her the right to say that she knew what it felt like too, to banish the serpent of inferiority setting ablaze her pride. The oxymoron of it all, she briefly thought to herself, of fighting the ego in the face of political disaster. Would she herself be the ultimate goal? To show, to prove how much she could handle, to declare how much she knew better, how much she was better, as opposed to how much she could help. The compulsion was undeniable, to want to see it with her own eyes, to witness her friends, as her mother did, be taken away for forced prostitution to the Japanese soldiers, or for the record, to the American soldiers too. She guessed the South Korean soldiers would have surely taken part. She wanted to know how her father's lungs felt when he held his breath underwater and mourned for his dead friend, watching the rifle bullets pierce through the sky above him like dragonflies before piercing into someone else's chest. She wished for the clairvoyance of knowing what political atrocities lay ahead, unable to identify this blind, almost violent eagerness to do whatever she could to protect the ones she loved, even herself. The thought made her tongue dry.
Thank you, Joanna. Wow, that was so propulsive. I felt like we were in the river.
Thank you, Marty. Funny, you're like reading your own work, and it's never something I don't think I'll get used to.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing with our listeners. Listeners, keep an eye out for the work of Jenise Miller and Joanna Hong. They're going to be huge. And I would like to ask them one last question as our parting gift to you all for listening. Can each of you recommend to me either a book or an author or a place in LA that you would recommend, like that you think our listeners should check out?
I have a recommendation here, and it's a book recommendation. It is an anthology, so it has poems, essays, stories, and plays. So I have it here. It's called Gathering, and it's an anthology that was created by Women Who Submit, which is a local organization. Well, it was founded locally, and they actually have chapters that are starting internationally, but nationally, to support women, non-binary writers who just to provide a space to like motivate folks to like submit their work and know that their work is valuable. And I'm going to read just a bit of what it says. Gathering is a collection of poems, essays, stories, and plays by women who submit members from various chapters. It is a way for members in our literary community to acknowledge the traumas of the past year and offer hope in the face of unprecedented challenges. So it was just recently released, actually, at the end of last year. And, it is my recommendation. It goes to support a really dope group that started in LA. And I mean, the writers too. The writers they're awesome. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you. Joanna, what should we check out?
I feel like listeners of this podcast may have already read this, but I'm a huge fan of Alexander Chee, the author, and I love his book, How to Write an Autobiographical Novel. That, it's like chef's kiss, like eternal chef's kisses for me. And it's whether you want to write an autobiographical novel or whether you want to write a poem or an essay, or I think whether you want to write anything or you're not sure of whether you're the right person to even write that thing, I think that you need to read this book if you haven't yet already, because it's a collection of essays. He speaks about, he recounts certain experiences that have really, presume shaped his life. And I sat down like for hours after I finished reading that book, or even each essay, and it really made me wish I read it earlier. So I recommend that. And also for places, be a little cheeky and say SKYLIT Books. Everyone should go to SKYLIT Books. Actually, like talking about libraries and bookstores from earlier, when I was a little teenager, I would take the bus to seek personal independence and take the bus down to SKYLIT Books. So it's a personal little haven for me, and I hope people can also visit.
Ah, that warms my heart. Thank you, Joanna. Also, huge fan of that Alexander Chee book. I think he says something in there that's like, writing a novel is like asking yourself a question that you can never get to the end of the question. It's something like that. And I think about that a lot. It kind of takes the pressure off because you're like, oh, I'm just asking myself a question. He's very wise. All right. Well, I think we are at the end of our time together. Jenise and Joanna, thank you so much for spending this hour with me and with our listeners. It's been really a treat learning about both of your journeys and hearing your work. And congratulations again on the fellowship. And I can't wait to read more of your work soon.
Thanks so much, Maddie.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast. Again, my guests today were Joanna Hung and Jenise Miller, 2021 Emerging Voices Fellows. If you are an aspiring writer, if you're emerging, if you're somewhere in that process, please check out the Emerging Voices Fellowship. Check out PEN America. They do amazing work and they can help connect you to the wonderful community of writers, whether you're in LA or anywhere in the world. So I hope that you've learned some things and that you are feeling inspired. And I want to encourage you to keep reading and don't be afraid to write also. All right, take care, everybody, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Thank you for listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylitbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.